brought them in specifically because many of them have the experiences that I want you to hear about from different funding mechanisms, different parts of the grants house. It should be a really educational seminar. I wanted to point out two different things though before we get going. The first is some resources for grants and fellowships for intramural trainees, including non-NIH funding, where we vetted some funding, and that's all located at that link. And I'll drop these slides into the chat as soon as I finish talking. So that link has lists of different fellowships you can apply for that are non-NIH, and how to vet other fellowships if you so are interested. And then the second part I said is wait, I came to learn how to write a grant. That is not what we're talking about today. We're talking more about the different funding opportunities, how to work with a program officer, how to work with SROs, scientific review officers. What is the difference between those two? How to work with your mentor. We have a list of questions that we're going to talk about. So if you want to learn more about how to write a grant, the OITE has a really lovely Grant Writing 101 seminar that you can look at. And if you also should look with your training director. Your training director also likely offers some in-depth courses that are much more specific towards your institute. I also did just turn on the closed caption, the transcripts. So if you would like to turn those on, please do. So I'll introduce our speakers, and then we have a little bit of a pattern of how we're going to take today. The first is Roya. Roya is from NIAID, and she is the research training officer. The second is Delaney. Delaney is a program officer for NIMDS in the training department. He also was an SRO right after his postdoc, so he really understands both sides of the house. Isa Vincent is a review officer, a scientific review officer, and NIMGS. And Edgardo is the director of PRAT, and I think another component through NIGMS, probably some K99s. So we're all going to talk about the different funding mechanisms and things like that. And I think we all decided either Delaney or Roya was going to start us off on the different types of funding mechanisms that are out there. I don't remember who.
Delaney, you want me to start it off?
That's fine with me. Yeah.
Okay. Here, let me then. Hi, everybody. I should say hi first, right? It's probably a good thing to do. So let me screen share real quickly to basically show you guys sort of. So from the NIAID perspective, this is a really overwhelming slide, I know, but these are all of the K mechanisms that NIAID supports. So not all of these are going to be relevant to you guys being an intramural, but I just wanted to give you guys a sense that there's a lot out there. And so you really have to carefully look at these when you're trying to navigate funding mechanisms to figure out what's available and what you're eligible for. As far as the ones that we're probably primarily going to be focusing on, it's the transition awards. So the K22 and the K99s. NIAID has a K22 program. We also have the standard K99R00 that you guys have probably heard about. We have a specific K99R00 for physician scientists, so those with an MD. And then we also participate in the MOSAIC K99R00 that NIGMS runs that they can tell you more about. And then we also have some K01s and things like that that you would have to apply to once you're in an extramural setting in order to be eligible. I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between a K22 and a K99, at least from an NIAID perspective. Different ICs use K22s very differently. We use the K22 pretty heavily as sort of like a mini K99 almost. So basically these are both transition awards that we use that are available to both extramural and intramural folks. The K22 does not require a mentor. The K99R00 does for the K99 portion. Both are the intent to help postdocs transition from faculty or from postdoc to faculty. The K-22, we have a 5-year eligibility window. The K-99 has a 4-year eligibility window. So the K-99 is a little tighter. The K-22 has 2 phases. So it's kind of the same concept as the K-99 and then an R00, but we don't provide any funds for the first phase. Not that it would really matter, because as intramural, we're not going to give you funds for the K-99 anyway. But basically, the K-22, we give you 1 year to try to find a faculty position. And then from there, we'll give you $150,000 in the first year and $100,000 in the second year of your phase 2 once you've transitioned to faculty and extramural. For the K-99 R00, you have 2 years during the K-99 phase to kind of figure a faculty position out. And then we'll give up to $249,000 a year for 2 years for the R00. Most other ICs do 3 years. We only do 2 years. So I just kind of wanted to give you guys a view of that. I used to work at NHLBI before, and we used the K-22 as a specific award only to NHLBI intramural trainees. So it was a limited program just for them. So you have to be real careful when navigating K-22s to figure out what exactly it is that you're applying for.
Real quick, Roy, I wanted to ask a quick question before we go on. Do either one of those have citizenship requirements?
Oh yeah, I forgot to say that. So the K-22 does have citizenship requirements. The K-99 does not. So you can be a non-US citizen to apply for the K-99.
Great, thanks. Delaney, how about you? Do you want to add on to that?
Yes, I want to add, I mean, Roy covered pretty much everything, but there is a couple of things that I want to add. Let me share this. Of course, now I have 200 windows open. I don't know which one I have to share. This one. No. Okay, so I'm not gonna be able to show because it would take me too much time. Basically, what I wanted to add was that we have, so as Roya mentioned, we at NIAID, every institute that she mentioned have their own K-22. We at NIAID have our own. Basically, is to support licensed neurologists for neurosurgeons and also for years. So I wanted to mention that, just throw it out there. That the same. It will support up to 5 years, the award up to 2 years of the intramural phase, which I mentioned we're not gonna fund that, but then 3 years or more, depending how long the training phase was after the intramural phase. But also I want to mention that we have, there are 2 more K-99s that we at the NIDS. We have the ADRD, which is, I believe it just came out. And we also have the Brain K-99, which I want to point out that, the Brain K-99 is directly targeted to diverse, so people, people from underrepresented groups, but they have the peculiarity that it's for 5 years versus all the other K-99 that are for 4 years. And also that for the K-99, I wanted to mention that, so if you are an applicant and you are beyond those 4 or 5 years, in the case of the Brain K-99, but you have some parental or medical or well-justified leave up to 1 year, you could talk to your program officer, and we will be evaluating that. And if you have a well-justified case, we're gonna extend that. So that's important too. So that's the only thing I wanted to add there. I thought that was important. And also I want to, so for the purpose as Lori asked me to talk about something at the very end, I'm gonna put in the chat 3 questions, and I want you to answer 2 only put a T if you think it's true. If you don't put anything, I assume that it's false. And there are 3 questions. So I want you to.
Do you want me to put it, send it to me? I can make a poll.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'll make a poll up. Okay. I'll make a poll up and then we show the data.
All right. I'll send it to you then.
Cool. So that sounds like, from what I'm hearing, the K99 R00 is pretty much the same, across institutes. It's the K22s that are really special. Edgardo, you run a special program too. Can you tell me more about yours?
Sure, and I will share my slides. I have a few slides. Today I wanted to talk to you about some programs from NIGMS. One of them is the PRAT program, and the other one is, I'm going to expand on what Roya mentioned, the MOSAIC K99R00. Let me share here. Okie dokes, can you see my slides? Yes, okay, perfect. So the PRAT program. PRAT program is a competitive 3-year fellowship, and it uses the mechanism of FI2. It is a parallel mechanism to what in the extramural world is known as the F32, which is a fellowship for postdoctoral researchers. Now, this FI2 or the PRAT program is a 3-year, like I said, a 3-year postdoc fellowship in intramural research labs. But as you may know, or you may not know, NIGMS does not have an intramural program component. So this program, NIGMS is funding postdoctoral fellows across the many different ICs of NIH. And so the program provides stipend. It provides actually a bump in the stipend, provides health insurance, and a $3,000 per year travel and training allowance. And it of course provides access to all of the NIH facilities and the great resources from OITE, but it's also a structured program with specific defined training components, such as we have an annual symposium, we have a seminar series that meets twice a month, we have additional professional development activities, among others. But also a special part of this program is that you are joining a group of fellows that are not just from your background, but from across all of NIH. And so it's that sense of building a community and really networking outside of your comfort zone that is important in the program. PRAT is only available for US citizens or permanent residents, and it supports all research areas of NIGMS, which is very, very broad, as you can imagine, being like a basic general medical sciences institute. And it's ideally for your initial postdoctoral period. So if you are thinking of applying for PRAT or for a K99, I would say PRAT is more of an early postdoctoral grant that you can have, and then more mid to late is when you like apply for your K99. I would say more mid rather than late, but we can talk about that later as well. Some program considerations. We really, like I said, we want postdocs to apply early in their postdoctoral career. This is because we are a 3-year program, and there is that 5-year limit for the ERDAs. And so we don't want to hit into that 5-year limit. We also accept applications from senior graduate students that are finishing up their graduate studies. We are looking for fellows with a commitment to leadership, diversity, and service. And that is demonstrated in the leadership statement. That is one of the main differences between the PRAT fellowship and an F32, is that the PRAT fellowship requires an attachment called the leadership statement. And we're also interested in the program reflecting the diversity of the biomedical talent pool, not just in terms of scientific interests, but also in terms of backgrounds. For PRAT Contacts, I'm the current PRAT director. Anissa Brown is the PRAT co-director, and Chrissy Shaw is our program analyst. We will be having a PRAT webinar sometime this summer, either June or July. And the next PRAT funding announcement will be reissued this summer. And the current funding announcement is expired, but we got a permission and we'll be publishing that sometime in July for an initial October 2022 due date. So similar to previous funding announcements. So if you are interested in PRAT, you can still use the previous FOA as a guide to build your application on. And this is just a picture of the current PRAT fellows. We did an activity where we picked what's going to be our word of the year. And as you can see, many, there was self-care, chill, balance, breathe. It's been a hard time for many of us.
So I have a question, actually. Oh,
Yes.
You're going to go to MOSAIC. I have a question actually for everyone, just to make sure that we're all clear. Most of the opportunities, whether it's PRAT, K99, K22, and as we go and talk about the MOSAIC, these are all really for folks who are 4 to 5 years post PhD, correct? Are there any options for fellowships for folks who are in that little bit extra research fellow type of phases?
You mean after the 4 years?
Yeah, 4 to 5 years, because it looks like the K22
Right.
is 5. I usually say no. You have to. You're in a dead zone, and you have to wait until you're a faculty member. Am I wrong?
No, you're not. As
Yeah.
far as I know, you're not, unfortunately.
I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
think NHLBI's K22 has a time limit.
So that's interesting. So you have to
I-
look really institute to
Yeah.
institute.
Yeah, but again, theirs are only for NHLBI intramural folks. It's not
Mm.
for anyone in a different IC that wants to apply for NHLBI funding would have to do the K99. So I think, though, I'm not 100%.
Yeah,
Though,
I'm positive that the NINDS K22 is 4 years after completion of
Yeah.
residency or
so just a heads up, there are extenuating circumstances that can extend that window. So be mindful. There are extensions for children, dependent care of all ages. So there are ways like you could extend that window, and there was a COVID extension for quite a while as well. So just be mindful of that. If you have those life circumstances, reach out, especially to your program officer. They'll be able to tell you. I'm more or less checking with them before I allow your application to go in if it's outside that window. So.
Yeah.
All right, real quick on MOSAIC, so we have enough time to
Yeah,
hit the rest of
sorry.
our stuff.
Yeah, real quick. So MOSAIC, I'm going to go through the specifics of the special things about MOSAIC. So MOSAIC is, yes, it is a K99 R00. It is intended to promote the diversity of the biomedical research workforce at the faculty level. And so MOSAIC is you apply for a K99 R00, similar to applying for a K99 R00, but when you if you were awarded the K99 R00, you would be then placed in a cohort. And this cohort is housed or hosted by a professional society that provides the professional development activities and the networking necessary to try to help retain these like as they transition to their jobs, to try to help them like retain those faculty positions. And so as they're awarded, currently there are 3 societies are ASBMB, which is Society for Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, the American Society for Cell Biology, and the American Association for Medical Colleges. Those are the 3 current professional societies or associations that are hosting these cohort groups for MOSAIC scholars. Like I said, they would receive skills development as a cohort by the professional society that's hosting them, but also leveraging other networks like the National Research Mentoring Network and mentoring activities there. It really helps with career visibility and enhancement because some of these professional societies, even in their annual meetings, they are promoting their MOSAIC scholars and having specific sessions for MOSAIC scholars. This is a trans-NIH initiative, and so don't view it as it's just NIGMS. Like Roya said, they support the MOSAIC K99. So all of these institutes here support the K99 R00 for MOSAIC. So even though you're not NIGMS science, but you are NIDA, you can still apply for MOSAIC, and NIDA will be the one funding your, well, not really because it's intramural, but you know what I mean. It's not just NIGMS, is what I mean. But there are specific differences here. So MOSAIC is restricted to US citizens and permanent residents, as opposed to the parent K99, which is open to everyone. The MOSAIC K99R00 also requires a diversity statement by the applicant. And like I said, as opposed to the parent K99, this is a cohort model. So once you get the grant, you are gonna, you are part of a cohort. It's not just you get the grant and you're on your own. But if you are interested in MOSAIC as well, Dr. Kenneth Gibbs is the current program contact for MOSAIC at NIGMS. And these are just some helpful links to stay connected and up to date. This is the NIH funding. It's really important for you to stay up to date with the NIH guide and try to sign up and subscribe to the NIH guide. Every Friday they release a table of contents of like all the new funding announcements or notices of special interests that are coming out that week. Also, NIGMS has what we call the feedback loop, where we post many blogs on either the biomedical grant enterprise or specific mechanisms for NIGMS and such. And also, there's a number of Twitter accounts here that really provide a lot of helpful information. NIH's OER Twitter account's pretty good. So
pretty good.
Yeah.
That's your boss, I think, Isa, I wanted to kind of hand it off to you now to kind of talk a little bit about how we got a lot of information of the different mechanisms that are out there, but how do program and review? Why are they different? Why are they in two separate parts of the house? All that kind of stuff. Could you explain that?
Sure. So what I wanted to mention something. So so the MOSAIC, sorry, not MOSAIC, K9, it's ESI Mira may be an option for those who are outside that 5-year that are looking to do the transition. It may be if you have that that pedigree, you may be actually able to do the transition over. It's kind of looking for someone that isn't, especially at NIGMS, it is an option that is used sometimes for those people that instead of going and doing the K99R00, they actually go and do an ESI Mira. So that may be another option and it doesn't have a time limit, I do believe, on when they get applied for that ESI, other than the early stage investigator status window, which is, I think, only you just need to not have an R01. So so it's an open window for you. So looking at the kind of the division of program officer and science review officers, it's really kind of a difference in kind of phase of the grant life cycle. The science review officer's role is really to make sure like the administrative reviews done of each of the applications. So making sure that you actually have everything that you need to submit the document to the government, but also help you with that process. Also, we're in charge of really reviewing the scientific merit of that. So we assemble a panel of scientific experts in the field that your application is in to review your application. And then based on that, and it's kind of actually part of the reason why there's two separate roles, because the program officer's role is not, it's kind of a conflict of interest, it's mitigation of that, where while the SRO is in charge of really assessing the quality of the application, then taking that assessment, the program officer can make the final funding decisions, so that they're not playing a role in, say, perhaps skewing the panel or something like that, that may influence who is actually getting not funded, but getting higher or lower scores. Lower scores are good. So kind of separating those two roles kind of helped mitigate that problem. And then through the life cycle of the grant, then the program officer is then in charge of like yearly requests for the PI, making sure everything's turned in on time, and helping them in that process. So it just kind of, so I only see your grant once every 4 to 5 years, but the program officer has a portfolio that he's in constant communication with the PIs going forward. So yeah, so that's kind of how it is. And that's kind of also why that they have a little bit more closer ties to all the PIs, because they've been working with them multiple times a year. So while me, I'm like, all right, I know your name, I know your reputation, but you know, I don't know you personally, so it's less of a conflict.
Hey, Isa, how many K-99s or K-22s are in a review panel?
It depends on the institute. So I can only speak to NIGMS. Our panels typically range from about like 20 to 30, depending on the panel. So NIGMS's portfolio is very broad. So yeah, as we cover almost all basic science, we have applications from everywhere. And we don't usually review our MOSAIC K-99s and our normal K-99s in the same panel. So we try to split them into whatever makes sense for that round. So depending on the pool that we get in, we'll start to kind of fraction them off into smaller pools of grants so that we can actually put together a panel that they have somewhat overlapping expertise. Because if you have one giant panel handling like 50 to 60 applications, it'll be really hard, especially in NIGMS, really hard to cover all the areas. And most of the time the reviewers will be sitting there and like, I don't cover basic inorganic chemistry, while someone speaking about like, I don't know, like social scientists, like it's completely different. So we split them up and we try to like group them as best we can. And then we build a panel from there. So we try to split into 2 or 3, so it's about 30. But it depends. And like our PRAT panel, which is the other one we run internally, is about 30 probably, something like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow. That seems like a lot of work. It keeps us busy, right?
For the reviewers, yes. So like I had to do the initial admin review, and then it's just like managing cats. That's all I do.
Yeah, yeah, right. So Delaney and Roya, I'd love to know a little bit more about, you got program officers. We often talk to postdocs and fellows and PIs in general. You really need to get to know your program officer and connect with your program officer. But how, when, how often? Tell me more about what that looks like.
You want to start, or do you want me to? All right. So yeah, that's a great question. And so my answer to that is as soon as possible, initiate the conversation, but make sure that soon as possible means that you are ready. I mean, you don't want to reach out to the program officer if you don't have a very clear idea of what you have in mind. I mean, at least you should have your aims listed and a good idea of what your grant is going to do. So the first thing that you should figure out for all these fellowship and transition career award is what institute is the best institute to go. So, and for that, you need to reach out. Typically, the way we do it at NINDS, I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but so the applicant reach out to us at the training office, and then we at the training office identify with the aims page who would be the potential program director that will take the application based on expertise. Then we reach out to them, and once, and this sometimes take a couple of weeks, people to respond to me, which I don't love it, but it's what it is. So keep that in mind. It's a long process. So sometimes people get to me 2 weeks before the deadline. That's not gonna work. So so that's one thing. Reach out to the institute that you think is the good fit. Then you're gonna hear back from them, and eventually then reach out to whoever the program officer is. And if it is any of these award, fellowships or transition career award, I also recommend to talk to us at the training offices, because I mean there is a very but we're gonna get to that a little bit later, but it is a very important component. The training component, it can easily kill an application. It doesn't matter how good a candidate you are, how great your science is. The training component is missing or is lacking, it will crush your application. So, and that's the reason why you should reach out to the program officer.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that. So when you're trying to figure out an IC to contact, one of the ways that you can do that, so first, like we've been talking about, different ICs have different funding announcements. So you have to look at the funding announcement and see if the IC is participating. So that's kind of the first important step. And then the next is to figure out if your science aligns with that particular institute. One of the ways that you can do that, which I'm putting the link in the chat right now, is with the NIH Matchmaker. So you can put in either some keywords or your whole specific aims page if you want, and throw that in there, and it'll try to find alignment to an IC and a program officer. And so that's one way to find a program officer to talk to. The other is to look at the funding announcement and find the contact for that IC in the funding announcement. So they're going to be the ones that know all the details about the funding announcement and the ins and outs of the policies around it. And so I just wanted to make sure to add that in there because that's a really important tool. I've used Matchmaker before when people have reached out to me and I'm like, I don't think this fits us, but I don't want to tell them, I don't know where this goes. So I'll try to put it in Matchmaker and see like, oh, I think maybe you should try, NINDS or something like that instead.
Okay, so great. Matchmaker helps us figure out which institute, the training offices in the various institute. And is there a link towards where all the training offices are? And so how do you connect with them? But I guess one of the things is you can connect early. You're just with that program officer. Are you just saying, hey, here's my specific aims. What do you think? What are you really asking them when you connect with that program officer?
Do you want to go first, Delaney?
Go for it.
I mean, you really are asking, often the questions that we get are, does my science align? So it's just double checking that they're sending the research to the right place. Usually then, especially with Ks, we get questions about eligibility. So particularly for K99 and K22, checking that you're within the eligibility window, asking if there's availability for extensions for childbirth or things like that. So those are kind of, you want to approach with some targeted questions, just saying like, hey, let me know what you think. Do you have any advice? I don't know what to do with that. I don't really know what to do with that. And so for me, our office, NIAID, we have, I'm housed within the Office of Research Training and Special Programs. Pretty much all of the funding announcements for training and career development grants link the point of contact to our office's email inbox. And so we handle all those inquiries. Oh, one more thing I was going to say, POs miss emails. We get a lot of them. If they don't respond, don't just give up. Keep sending it. Yeah. Keep sending it. Don't just go, oh, I guess they're not going to talk to me, and then like not try to get the help that you need.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. I mean, especially trainees look at us as like we were like completely unreachable people. And actually, I mean, I speak for myself, but I think I'm speaking for four of us. Our job is actually to help them and to make sure that they could put the best application possible. I mean, we want to find the best application, so then we want you to submit the best application that you can submit. And I mean, to touch again on what are you supposed to be asking us? And this is why I make emphasis on all fellowships and career transition awards. Talk to the training office, because there is a training component that typically the program officer that will take the application are not like on top of it. But at the same time, talk to your program officer, at least the way we do it. Even if I am an expert on the topic of the application, I don't want to interfere because it's not, I want the program officer to deal with that because it's the way they see it. They're gonna be the one overseeing the grant. So I never talk about the science unless the program director asks me to. But I think again, and I'll never get tired of repeating that. The training component is really important, and there are a lot of questions that it seems really simple and naive, but a lot of people don't pay attention to them, and it kills it. And we're gonna get to that in a moment.
Okay, so we know how to talk with our program officer now. The next big person in the room is our mentor, right? So especially for the K-99, many of the K-99 require our mentors to write letters of support. The training plan absolutely has a lot of components that our mentor has to be part of. How do we and our PI, our current PI, especially for the K-99 or K-22 phase, what do I need from my mentor?
Okay.
Well, I can tell you what. Oh, I don't know who it's targeted towards for that one.
Isa, go ahead, and then we'll hand it to Delaney.
No. So when on the review panel, we kind of see. I know we might discuss this in a little bit, but there is kind of a stress that you need to have that conversation very early, and specifically with your mentor, because when the reviewers look at your mentor statement, it's a part of the component of the application for most of these mentored research awards, is that they're looking to see, is this kind of tailored one to your skills and expertise and what you need for training? So kind of going back to Delaney's point, you need to have that conversation early, because if their mentor statement is just kind of a cookie cutter, the reviewers will know. The reviewers have mentored people before. So they will know that this is a cookie cutter one that is not really speaking to your strengths, what you want to do. It may just be talking about their, how they may have trained thousands of people already. They're the head of their field. That's fine. But if it's not, their mentor statement is not really tailored to you, they can tell, and then that's usually a no-go. They'll say they haven't talked. If you're aligned, if what you write, what you want to do is not aligned with what they say that you're going to do, they'll spot that too. And that will also get you more or less, you won't even get discussed at the meeting. We can talk about kind of like the phases of a review meeting and what happens a little bit before and a little bit after, but you want to be at least discussed during the review meeting. Because if it's not discussed, you're really only just going with what the three reviewers said. You're not scored and you can't be funded at all. If you're not discussed, you cannot be funded. Some institutes may reach further down, even if you have a lower score, and you may be able to be funded. But if you're not discussed, you're out. There's no pile. It was kind of in the pre-questions that there's no pile unless you fail to put something in the application that you don't like. If you haven't put your any particular paperwork, that can put you in the no pile because you won't get seen because you don't have it. But this is how you don't get discussed, which is something very critical. If you do not have that match with your boss when you're writing it, you're out. That's probably the first thing. That's kind of the first hurdle a lot of people stumble on.
Yeah, it could have been said better. And so again, two things that are really critical here. As Isa said, if you did talk to your mentor or not, it's pretty obvious. And if your mentor had a role in the application, it's also pretty. So there is something that is very important here, that sometimes we think, because this is, we at the training program officer always tell the applicant, when you write whatever you write in your fellowship, your career transition award, make sure that you're talking about you. It's you. It's not us. It's the first person. This is your research. However, in this transition award, the mentoring part is critical, and the mentor has to be. So, for example, one thing that I never get tired of repeating for the K-99, the separation statement is pretty much the key of the grant. I mean, you can have a great, even a mentor say, yeah, he's great and he is some idea and all that. If the mentor don't say specifically, this is their project and they're gonna take it with them when they get out of my lab. If they don't say that, most of the time it gets crushed because, and sometimes, so when I was on SRO, I was like, well, this is kind of unfair because I mean, the fact that the mentor does something negative, but actually it is then later I understood that it's actually to protect the trainee, because I mean, if you get an R00 and then you move on to the new institution in which you have, so they hire you for your research, but also you come in with an R00, and then all of a sudden you're gonna be evaluated based on the project that you are bringing with you, and because you don't have that agreement with your mentor, you cannot take it, and then you have to start from zero, and everything will get delayed. So actually, that part is to protect you, and it's really important. And a lot of obligations come with that, not even there, not even mentioned. And that's a critical part. So all that has to do with talking to them, not only talking to the mentor, but the mentor getting involved. How is this mechanism? What the application has to say? I mean, regardless how great the research is and how great are you as an applicant, what is the key element of the, and that only you learn by reading the FOA, but also by talking to us.
And one of the other things is make sure that they're also clear, your mentor is also clear about competition going forward, especially for the K99, is so like, if they put that one sentence in there, it really can, like, when, as he says, like the separation statement, it can be one or two sentences and it can make or break your application. So like reviewers say, there's no indication here that this person can take it with it. Boom, one. The other one is make sure that there's like a talking about how you were going to negotiate competition going forward. Because sometimes it's easy. Like you're doing a really synergistic project with some other area and you're going to kind of develop a new area. That's great. Your boss is like, yeah, this is like a side thing of my lab, and I'm going to be, they could take it, and I'm not going to be able to compete with them. But if you end up in the same field, you need to discuss in your application to make sure that the reviewers know that this is how we're going to cooperate going forward. And this is why competition, the conversation with your boss is essential early on, because you need to have that negotiated probably when you start thinking about your project, because you need to have that ready to go so that when you're saying, all right, when I go into the field, am I going to be beaten out by you every time I put in a new application? So.
God bless, right? So Isa, you talked a little bit about the review process, and I think that's where we're starting to head. Okay, so you've got your application, you're ready to go. Now you're submitting it off to the NIH. Tell us, what does the review process actually look like?
Sure. So I know for everyone, it really is kind of a black box. Like I gave a talk at AAAS about it. It's more or less, you just kind of throw it into the system, and then you just hope in 9 months you hear back from someone. We understand a lot of stuff is going on behind the scenes, and that's why it kind of takes a long time. So just to kind of highlight some of the significant points so that we don't kind of belabor, because I can go on and on about the review process. I think no one wants that. So when you submit it into the system, it goes into kind of a central processing area at the NIH. I recommend, as Delaney and everyone says, please contact your program officer, but also talk to me early before if you have any questions, because once you submit, you have 3 days, 3 days or the due date. So you have 3 days once you submit your application to revise anything that you might have forgotten. You might need to add an attachment. You can do that within 3 days as long as the due date has not passed. And after that due date, no matter what you have, if you haven't done anything, it's sent off to the next component, which is Division of Receipt and Referral. It's just a place where they send out these grants to the correct office. So I get all the ones that are supposed to go to NIGMS that involved with like K99s, PRATs, whatever. It comes to our office, goes to the specific institutes that it's directed towards. All right, so that's the first part. So after that, it lands on my desk, and I start reading through them to make sure you have all your essential components and you meet the eligibility criteria. So we're checking to make sure that really, are you eligible, especially for like the K-99? Are you within that 4 years? Do you have any extenuating circumstances that I need to find out and look up? Making sure you have all your attachments. And then after that, I'm looking for reviewers. And that's actually probably the thing that takes the longest time is depending, if it's a standing panel, it's not so hard. I then look at your application and say, the topic here matches Professor X, Professor Y, Professor Z. Like, so I can give it to these 3 people. If it's not a standing panel, I haven't recruited anybody yet. So I have to say, all right, I need to now go out and find and just start emailing not university, but professors and saying, all right, hey, your topics are kind of in alignment with this application. Would you be willing to serve on this panel? You get a lot of yeses, you get a lot of no's. You finally build up your panel. So that's why it takes so long to do that part. Once that's done, I then give them probably about 2 months to read your application. Then after that 2 months, they turn in the summary statements. We convene a meeting. Used to be in person. Hopefully we'll return to in person. But we do it virtually now. And we discuss all the applications, except, as I mentioned before, those that in the initial assessment are deemed less meritorious. And those less meritorious applications do not get discussed. Like, we have a brief, quick vote at the beginning. Like, does anyone want to rescue any of these applications? No. Those are put to the side because we really want to focus on the ones that have the highest merit so that we could actually focus all, because we only have a limited time to discuss all these applications.